All right, looks like it's recording. So if you want to start recording as well, Ms. Rosalind, you can do so.
Okay.
All right.
So you want me to do, that makes sense. We'll do the meditation first.
I'm going to do a quick little introduction, and then I'll let you know when we're ready for your meditation, if that's okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay. All right. You good and recorded, Ms. Rosalind?
It's not, it said I have to request it from you.
Oh, that's right. So how about just let me record, and I think I can just send it to you once we're done.
That works.
Okay. Okay, well, ladies and gentlemen, once again, thank you for being on the OldSoulz interviews. This is my second interview for the week, and I am extremely excited, and I'm extremely expanded because I sit among giants in this planet. And for those who don't know anything about the OldSoulz interviews, my tag phrase is, how do you know what you know, and when did you know it? And we're going to be taking a slightly different turn as we talk about mything the next era for humanity. And so we're going to hear from people in all different kinds of backgrounds and all different kinds of corners, talking about what they get a sense of as relates to this next era of our planet. And I know that everyone has their own terms and they have their own language to describe what's happening in the planet right now, but we hope to add and to contribute to what we think is going on. So before we get started, there's a few things that I would like to share and to discuss, and then we'll move forward from there. I'm actually going to have wait a minute, not Duane, I have to correct my outline. I'm going to have an open meditation with Mr. Neil. So Neil, if you can lead us through a meditation, and then I'll go from there.
Great. I'm happy to be with you all. We're just going to take 2 or 3 minutes to get ourselves centered. I am going to do a meditation actually based on Walt Whitman's meditation. So I'd like us to take a deep breath. I'm going to read a couple lines of words that he wrote in a ecstatic, transcendent moment, and then I'm going to walk us through his meditation, and we'll take a breath in the middle of that. It should all be over in 2 or 3 minutes. In that condition, the whole body is elevated to a state by others unknown, inwardly and outwardly, illuminated, purified, made solid, strong, yet buoyant. A singular charm, more than beauty, flickers out of and over the face. A curious transparency beams in the eyes. The temper partakes also. Nothing that happens, no event, rencontre, weather, etc., but is confronted. Everything is confronted. Nothing but is subdued into sustenance. Such is the marvelous transformation from the old timorousness and the old processes of causes and effects. Sorrows and disappointment cease. There's no more borrowing, trouble, and advance. A man realizes, a woman realizes the venerable myth that she is a God walking the earth. She sees new eligibilities, powers, and beauties everywhere. He himself had a new eyesight and hearing. The play of the body in motion takes a spiritual, previously unknown grace. Merely to move is then grace. Gratification, drink, spirits, coffee, stimulants, mixtures, late hours, luxuries, deeds of the night seem as vexatious dreams, and now the awakening. Many fall into their natural places, wholesome, conveying diviner joys. Let's take a deep breath. And then the meditation itself. Extract yourself from where you are. Realize where you are at present located. The point you stand that is now to you the center of all. Look up overhead. Think of the space stretching out. Think of all the unnumbered orbs wheeling safely there in the universe, invisible to us by day, some visible by night. Think of the sun around which the earth revolves, the moon revolving around the earth, and accompanying it. Think of the different planets belonging to our system. Spend some minutes faithfully in this exercise. Then realize yourself upon the earth at this particular point. This point that you now occupy, which way stretches the north and what countries, seas, etc., which of the south, which way the east, which way the west. Seize all of these firmly in your mind, pass freely over immense distances. Fixed definitely. Turn your face a moment to the directions and the idea of the distances of separate sections of your own country and of England, Mediterranean, Cape Horn, the North Pole, and such like distant places. We are together. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, sir. That was powerful, man. That was powerful. All right. I just want to rest in that a little bit. Can we just kind of rest in that for a few more minutes or a few more seconds? So I want you all to keep in that space where you are. I'm going to move forward and speak, but you all keep in that space. As we talk about mything a new story and mything the story of, I said humanity, but really it encompasses the planet at large. When we think about solar power and the sun and the moon, and we think about the energies that move, including the cosmos and all of the energies that encompass our planet, I think that these are things that these are energies that we're bringing in as we speak. I don't think that there's much that I want to speak to in terms of mything, because I think that we're going to be doing the work as we speak and as we share. As we do share, I would just like to cover a few just etiquettes. I don't think it's really necessary, but I'll cover it just for the sake of doing so. If we can please make sure that cell phones and any other kinds of noises are cut to a minimum. As I say, everyone is moving. If we can just make sure that those things are cut down. And then, of course, when we are speaking, if we can just make sure that we are speaking one at a time so that we can hear each other. And then, of course, for those who will be listening to the recording later, that they can also hear as well. This is a safe space. And I'm fully confident that everyone that's on this line tonight respect a safe space and respect people in general. So, that's just kind of a given there. And if there's any added comments, please feel free to share them at any point after, the tips. But let's all just share and telling the vision of the next chapter of our planet and the cosmos. And let's just give our contribution. That's what I really like to leave my last statements up to this point as. And so is there anything else that anyone would like to add before we move to introductions? What do you think about that meditation? Did anyone see any visions or imagery? Because I saw a few myself, but I would like to just hear some small feedback from you all. What did you sense during that meditation?
Well, it was beautiful, and it was incredibly appropriate for what we're beginning to do here at our round table. And I wanted to thank you, Neil, for that. I hadn't heard that in quite a while. And it was so nice to just take that in and let that sit within the shelter of our internal being. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
One thing I appreciated was were the words, merely to move is grace. Merely to move is grace. And I think we're going to get into the mythology of a living universe where just to move, and the miracle of that is grace.
Anyone else?
Well, it's interesting, you know, the meditation that he did. A lot of folks thought that Walt Whitman must have fallen. He had some big moment in his life where he had this, created a completely different self. And some people don't know if he had a seizure, you know, that, you know, something happened to him because he went from a really ordinary newspaper reporter and editor and carpenter to all of a sudden creating the free verse that he did that completely changed poetry, and then also coming up with these insights. And before this moment, when he was 33 years old, he wrote the worst poetry and the worst prose you could ever, well, I wouldn't say it's the worst ever, but completely unenlightened, uninformed by the universe. And then all of a sudden something happened. And I believe that in 1854 and 55, he discovered a meditation based on particularly Hindu research that he was doing that Ralph Waldo Emerson gave him. And I think he created his own meditation, and that's what caused him to go in the direction that he did.
Wow.
Well, it was beautiful, and you're right. There are turning points, sometimes in an individual life, sometimes in a nation, sometimes in a planet, and focusing on that kind of turning point and how generative that can be when you're creation birthed from chaos in some respects, or some sort of explosion. I mean, I like how you brought that up, and I think it's true. In a lot of respects, that those things happen and we dig deep and find something.
Indeed.
Well, I'll say, you know, the imagery of the sun, the moon, and the planet Earth coming in my mind, I saw it as an alignment. And it was something about that image that gave me just an incredible sense of oneness. I think that's the best word that I have right now, is that there was a sense of oneness. So that really spoke to me. So I really appreciate, as everyone else have shared, I really appreciate the words that you chose to share with us during that meditation.
I want to say it was very beautiful. This is the meditations is very new to me. I can say for myself that that was an unlocking meditation for me, because I felt like there was a lot of things that were locked up just this week for me. And when the meditation started, it was like everything was kind of blank. And then as you begin to go on into it, I could see those visuals. I mean, I saw stars and everything. So it was an unlocking for me, and I believe it was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Seeing stars.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Shelly.
Seeing stars. It was gorgeous.
Yes. Well, if I can, let me just go down the line and have each of you to introduce yourselves, and we'll go from there. So, Duane, if you can be the first one, if you can, to just introduce yourselves, and then we'll move on accordingly. Shelly next, and so forth.
Sure. 3 words: a farmer, a futurist, and an activist.
Oh, nice. I love that. Well, I'm Shelly, and I am curious, and I'm a seeker, and I'm a paradox.
Nice. Constantina.
For me, I would say divine, eros, and earthly.
Wow.
Oh, that's lovely.
It is.
Very cool.
Next.
And I would describe myself in 3 words as spiritual, integral, and people-centered.
Nice.
Excellent.
Okay, I'm Rosalind. I would say loving, seeking, and divine.
Wow.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for giving a very short intro. I'm sure as you are able to share, you'll be able to also speak to some of the work that you're doing to contribute to the progressions of our planet. And so I'm going to allow anyone to jump on this first question that I have. Whoever feels the notion to just jump out there. And as Duane said before we got started, if it takes us 30 minutes or so for someone to feel the spirit, gotta wait for it, right?
That's right.
But here's a simple but very loaded question, I think, and that is, where do we come from? As many people would share when we talk about what we believe as the future and talk about where we're going. A lot of family and friends would always say, well, you got to talk about where we've been before we can talk about where we're going. And so I thought that, there's no better way to ask and start from the beginning. Where do we come from? And of course, we can start to move in a direction based on that question. Because I think that the way that we perceive where we're coming from, whatever that means for you, I think that's going to speak for different sides of the population of our planet. It's going to speak to and speak for many generations, different generations. So there's the question. There it is. Where do we come from?
I am moved to respond, Rod. And a week ago, I was with one of my dearest friends who passed. And I was there when she moved on. And she many times said the following. She said, we're born in mystery, we live in mystery, and we die in mystery.
Mm. Wow.
So beautiful.
Mm.
That is beautiful. Sorry for your loss.
Yes.
It was a celebration.
Yes.
It became a celebration.
The beauty of what she said is that she recognized a real truth. We don't know. It's unknown. And she embraced that.
Yes.
And that is such a glory to hear someone who actually could say, I don't know, and I embrace that unknowing.
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Duane.
I second that. It's life and death, it's where we came from is kind of incomprehensible on a lot of levels. We can't describe what God is. We kind of know where we came from systems wise, how the universe probably started in the Big Bang and how it evolved into galaxies but there's a lot of things we don't know. And it seems like we run in parallel. On one hand, we've got this physical manifestation of these things that we see, but when I'm thinking about like integral and upper left quadrant, that's timeless, and non-dual, and that is the thing that is impermanent. So all the other stuff fades away, but it's those things in the in our soul that transcend time and space.
Yeah. And I like to think that, as John O'Donohue thought, an Irish poet and philosopher, that somehow we are the manifestation of the longing, whatever is in that vortex of the unknown.
I love that. I love
Yes.
And therefore, we have a kinship with the unknown. We're not just cast out here without any connection to a greater source, whatever anyone wants to call it, but we're in relation to this mystery, which brings us into a shelter with it. So we don't have to be in complete bewilderment all the time. It's part of who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I like to think that it may have been John Donahue who said this too, but the concept that we're a dream the earth is having. And it's, I think about that sometimes as, are we a manifestation of a universal consciousness that's dreamed us up and we can dream of it, and then we move on to the next stage when we're ready? I don't know, but I've always been fascinated by that. So it's not biological in nature necessarily, but there's some connection to something larger than we are.
In terms of mythology, Shelly, I think there's a larger biology, if you will, and we've spoken about this in a way. If the universe is alive, this is going back to our original understanding for tens of thousands of years as a human family. If the universe is alive, there's subjectivity everywhere. There's a feeling quality in every crack and place throughout. And so we're growing then into aliveness. And to awaken now in this new world is a return to a sensibility we had for tens of thousands of years. But now science is saying, you're right. There is a deeper aliveness here that we can understand. We can detect with our scientific instruments. And so the new mythology that I see is that we're learning how to live in a living universe. We've in the past been exploiting what we thought was a dead universe. This thing is dead, let's exploit it on behalf of the most alive, ourselves. Now we're saying, wait a minute, life is everywhere, subjectivity is everywhere, the sacred regard is everywhere, and that's our original understanding. And so we're coming home once again, but with a new level of understanding.
I love that.
Good. Yes.
Yeah, it's really good.
I love that.
And Duane, that reminds me so much of the Celts. They looked at the earth itself as a living, breathing entity, and they were in relation with it daily. Their whole lives were surrounded around Ireland as the goddess, is what they referred to their country as, and the earth and the landscape. So I think it's many ways, it's a returning to ancient ways, but people were fully acquainted with.
Yes.
The time.
Mist walking.
Yeah, it's been interesting, with since there's been, particularly in the results of the last election, there's been a lot of science questioned, And while I applaud that, there's a lot of folks that are appreciating science, and obviously that's a reaction because a lot of folks are denying a lot of science, in all kinds of ways. It does bug me that when you hear scientists talk, they talk about it in a way where I think, Duane, you were kind of implying it's like there's nothing connecting the universe, that it is dead space. I sort of think about Rupert Sheldrake's work, and morphic resonance, and how there's this complete connection. So it's not empty; it's actually full, and so it does seem to be alive. And going back to kind of the opening beautiful comment that you described of your friend Duane, if the universe is alive, then all of us, every single thing is alive in it. And I guess I can infer that there's no death at that point.
Neil didn't go to school today. He came home.
Yeah, I think that's true. I was talking to Duane actually yesterday, and talking about when my dad was leaving this life, and he was very clear he would lose consciousness and then he would regain it. But he was very clear, and he told me that he was walking back and forth through the portal, and that on the other side of the portal he saw the druids. And I know a lot of people would say it's a hallucination or a delusion or a chemical release in the brain as you get close to death, but I was there and I understood the timbre in his voice, and I take a great deal of comfort out of that, and the manner in which he left, on his terms, and in the way that he wanted to go. But seeing that portal, I have no doubt that he saw it. So it's a comforting thing.
Well, this is a new mythology. Actually, no, it's not a new mythology. It's recovering an old mythology. More than 2,000 years ago, Plato said the universe is a single living creature that contains all living creatures within it. So it's an old understanding, but now we're bringing the tools of science, and we're also bringing the democratization of the world's wisdom traditions. And in my lifetime, we are bringing together the core wisdom of all the world's spiritual traditions, and we're beginning to see the common ground among them. And surprising to me, one of the areas of common ground is a core understanding about the nature of the universe. It's being continuously regenerated as in its totality at every moment. That is a core understanding found in every one of the world's wisdom traditions. So they say, do we have anything to say about the universe? Yes. The new mythology is that it's a living system, and it's being regenerated moment by moment by moment, and we are inside of that aliveness. And so the mythology starts with wholeness. It doesn't start with separation, do unto others out there. No, it starts with wholeness. We're already inside of it. The aliveness is within. So it is a radical transformation of perspective and a sense of who we are way beyond the physical biology and into the cosmic field that's really a measurable part of who we are.
Duane, what's interesting about what you just shared is after coming from the New Civilization course, one of the things that was pointed out during that meeting many things. It was just a 4-day of condensed just greatness. But on the last day, one of the students had stood up and talked about the Native American perspective and using nouns as we commonly do in the English language versus using verbs, which is more of the common, terms, if you will, in the Native American language. And I thought that was really, really interesting, and it stuck with me, even in the few books that I'm catching up reading right now with the Blackfoot physics. it talks about the constant movement. You know, we think about verbs and how we may call, you know, a river, and you make the assumption that it's stagnant, that it's not changing. But they have so many different words to describe what a river is, because it's constantly moving and it's constantly changing. And just thinking about what you just said, that the universe is constantly in this movement. And when you talk about the torus, and I want you to get into some of those things as well, but that kind of cyclical and spiraling kind of motion that our planet and the universe is experiencing, and we also being involved in that. And we seem to block off so much as it relates to something that Shelly talked about, you know, that in and out of a different portal. And I believe that we constantly experience that. To what degree, I'm not sure. But that was something I felt compelled to share, because even in the way that we describe what we know to be past, present, and future, that we have many other cultures who are bringing in their understanding, like the Aborigines, who says, well, we don't have a concept for future. We always look to the past as it relates to moving forward. Whereas, you know, we talk about future and in just a very different kind of way. And so I think that those things are going to be more present, as we've talked about before, as internet expands and more people are able to be heard, and more of the hidden kind of cultures, they begin to rise and tell their stories and talk about some of these spiritual aspects that I think have been muted for a very long time and have been stifled in many kinds of ways for, you know, whatever reasons, dominant hegemonic systems or what have you. But I'm very excited about hearing more about what the other corners of the world are saying about spirituality, what they're saying about what they sense and are moving forward or backwards, or in a cyclical way, or in a spiraling way, per se.
We're still on the first question of where did we come from, correct?
Yes,
okay.
Kind of.
I apologize. I had somebody come to the door unexpectedly, but, you know, when I think about the movement of the world, you know, the universe and everything, I know me personally, there was a time that I thought one way, but when I got this awakening, if you will, that the world is alive, I look at it like a flow, like a rhythm, like the world has had a rhythm, awake. It's always been alive, and it's been a rhythm. And now I'm actually in the rhythm. And so now I'm understanding more and more, and I feel like a newborn baby that's learning how to breathe outside of the womb, and now I'm discovering my fingers, and I'm discovering, you know, my hands and those types of things. And so this is, for me, you know, I've always been. So when you say where did we come from, I've always been. That's my answer.
That is so cool. I love that.
I love that. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, I got tingles.
Oh, okay.
That's great. That is great. Constantina, you're on mute.
I have a little puppy that's kind of trying to interfere, so I'm scaring all of you. But at any rate, what Rosalind just described so beautifully is wonder. She lives in the wonder of what it is to simply be here. Like the poet Rilke said, to be here is so much.
Yes.
So much.
Yes.
And you expressed that beautifully.
It feels good for somebody to get me.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, you're getting got. Yeah. Oh, Rod, now you're
on mute.
I'm telling everybody else to unmute, and I'm muted, right?
Yeah.
So when we think about purpose And I know that everyone in some way have kind of alluded to the ideas of purpose. How, express to me, I want you all just to speak to purpose in this moment as we talk about as one and being a unit, being as one. I don't think that there's anything I should add to that, but what is the purpose of the human race? Why are we here?
You know, you asked us to.
Another easy question.
Just a kindergarten question, you know, something that your grandkids or your children often ask, you know, come on with it.
You asked us to describe ourselves in 3 words, and each one of us had the definition of ourselves in those 3 words. And me, when I think about the 3 words that I describe myself, that's my contribution to the universe. I know that I'm loving. I know that I love people. It doesn't matter who they are. I love them. And that I'm a coach. You know, I know that I'm divine. I'm not just mere mortal. There's more to me than I even know. I'm still, you know, discovering the different facets of who I am. And so when I think of purpose, my purpose is locked up in each one of you, because I believe we all are a part of each other's purpose, which makes up the universe.
Wow.
What comes to mind for me, Rod, is that to know our purpose, we have to have a better idea of the purpose of the universe.
That's good.
What's the universe doing? Before looking at ourselves and being so obsessed with us, let's just step back and look and see what the universe is doing.
That's good.
And one way, obviously, to do that is just to look. Pull out the telescope, pull out the microscope, and just look everywhere you can and see, well, what's going on? And one thing that's going on again and again, from the smallest scale to the very largest, is the universe is creating self-organizing systems or organisms and such at every scale. So an atom is a self-organizing system that will persist for billions of years. And we just go up the scale from bacteria into higher level organisms, come to ourselves. We have a capacity for reflective consciousness, but it implies that life is seeking to express itself at every level. So I think what we need to see is that the universe is very busy with one central project, extraordinary, a central project of the universe, and it is to create life forms that are able to get a hold of themselves. And so evolution is not a line, but a loop. It's not a line, but a loop. And evolution is just not going up and out and in the disappearing. Instead, as you have indicated earlier, it's coming back around and connecting with itself and saying, yes, now I remember. I've been here before. This is the aliveness I knew earlier, but now I understand it at an entirely new level. With the integration of wisdom traditions, with the collaboration of my cousins and brothers and sisters around the earth, with an internet that allows us to collectively awaken our collective consciousness and begin a process of cultural healing, and so on. So I think we're coming into alignment, basically, finally, with the basic evolutionary dynamic and purpose of the universe, which is to say, we're learning how to live in this living universe, individually, collectively.
Wonderfully put. Wonderfully put.
I love that notion of the collective consciousness, because you know, at a subtle level, where every single action we have goes back to the morphic resonance thing, and there's no empty spots or dead spots in the universe. Everything we do has an impact. And Martin Luther King said something like, what impacts one dramatically individually affects all, subtly, something like that. It's a paraphrase. But for me, that resonates, the collective conscious piece. And it's the other thing that came to mind when I was thinking about that question was, and it kind of connects, I think, in some ways to what, Duane, you kind of framed this up at. You were talking about in the context of the universe. My other thought was sort of in parallel that I am on a personal level, as I evolve, as I'm this spirit in action, this movement towards complexity on one level. I'm also at the same time, and this surfaced during meditation, I'm a witness, and I'm witnessing and being aware of this self. And in my deepest meditation, the self disappears, and I can observe the observer. And it's kind of a wonderful moment where there's nothing left. And for me, it's clear light, is how I've described it before. It's while there's nothing there, it's everything. Everything is there, and there's when I come out of that, there's this deep sense of collective or connective consciousness. And I really like that you brought up that phrase. That word means a lot to me, actually.
Yeah, these are profound questions. I mean, I feel very humble at the moment because we're grappling with questions that have baffled all of us for so many years. On the other hand, it is individuals engaging in the inquiry that will eventually reveal the truth. That I believe is eternal in terms of what is. We may not understand it necessarily, but if we can think about it, and if we can love each other through it, it seems to me that is as good as it gets. And I wish I was always a loving person. I wish I was. I'm not. I have my moments, where I go, wow, I am not setting a good example today, of my higher values. but I think it's that just infinite capacity of the universe to forgive me for it and love me anyway, so that I can continue to engage in an inquiry that seems at once beyond me, while at the same time being absolutely, utterly necessary. That if we do not collectively engage in these conversations at a meta level where our collective unconscious can really get a hold of us, I think we will have failed. So even if we don't make it, the fact that we're trying has to stand for something. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but that's just what the conversation brought to my mind. So.
No, everyone, at this point, I think is contributing in a way that what I'm loving about it is because as we talk about mything the next era, or be it we are in the next era, it's unifying. It's like the abyss is unifying us in a way. The abstract is unifying us in a way that I think it deserves to be recognized, when right now we see so much division. And we see so many mediums that are playing on the divisions of everyone, especially being in the United States and watching the news from a different country and seeing the various things that are happening. I think that this is whether we have the right answers or not, I think that the process itself is very humbling for all of us to have to think about some simple but big questions that unifies us in a way. Mm-hmm. So thank you. Anyone else would like to share in that space? Because I want us to speak to where we are right now, but please feel free to share.
Seems to me we're trying to return to the old mythology, rugged individualism, the mythology of materialism as the source of happiness. You are what you consume, and the bigger your pile of stuff, the more important you must be. Mm-hmm. I'm being a bit facetious, but nonetheless.
Not really, not if you turn on TV.
No.
So I would call that an ego economy. An ego economy. We think we're biological beings, and we are measured by our material status, if you will, to a significant, not completely, but to a large extent. And now I think a new mythology is emerging in the context of a living universe, and it's a shift from an ego economy to an aliveness economy. And it says, what I really want out of life is more juice of aliveness. That's what I want. I want aliveness. Where do I find it? Well, music and poetry and art and relationships and play, and you can go down a huge long list. And it doesn't cost a lot. You can live simply in an economy of aliveness. Well, that's exactly what we need. And people are then getting the satisfaction and growth that they want. So we're in transition now. It's a confusing time to be in the midst of an old mythology that's not working, a new mythology that has a lot of juice and joy, but it's not here yet. And here we are in between. So that's how I see us, roughly halfway home, if you will.
I love that concept, aliveness economy.
Yeah.
I think that's fabulous.
Yeah.
And we do create myths and mental models and stories that we've told ourselves about what success looks like, or what it means, or what you drive, or where you go. And the older I get, the less important any of that stuff seems to me at all. And the more important just those moments of, oh my God, I love this song, or, those just seem so much more important than anything else. And I think the powers that be in this world that are desperately trying to hold on to that ego economy are doing great destruction and great damage by continuing to drive wedges in between us, to make us afraid of each other, to make us not want to talk to each other. That is how the ego economy will preserve its power.
That's right.
And the stronger the pull gets to move away from that economy, the more desperate they're going to get. And I feel like one of the reasons why there's a tremendous amount of global instability, in spite of the fact that, Steven Pinker has done studies and people have done studies about this as one of the most peaceful times, in human history. We can look at that, and we can try to look at that as a concrete set of facts. But when we see this, when we feel that tension, it explains the military rhetoric and the drum beats, and it explains the propaganda, and it explains all of the things that seem to be happening right now, because they need a big stunt to get us back into line.
Yeah.
And I'm really hoping that it does not come to that. But but there's a disturbance in the force, but it's because a lot of us are seeing there's an alternative. Like, we don't have to live in the paradigm that was created for us. We can exist in another paradigm, and a lot of us are looking for it, to find it, and more power to every single person who engages in that active inquiry in their own life as to what that means for them.
Yeah, I would tag on to that. The 21st century seems to be a transitional century. We're creating a new narrative about what it means to be human, to understand the universe, to think about what civilization is. And in the past, it's been, our understanding of the world's been defined by a very narrow subset of people, the church, and then the reaction of the church with white men and the Enlightenment. So it was a really small understanding of the fullness of the universe. And now that we're in this moment where it's all coming undone. And I think that's a good thing, though. Somebody said that they were optimistic when they were describing themselves in the beginning, and I'm optimistic about it, but it's going to be scary and frightful. But unless enough of us stand up and put ourselves on the line and work for catalytic, constructive, inclusive change, well, we could lose this thing. We could lose the humanity and disappear in the universe. And with all that happening, things are on one hand becoming more interconnected, and we're more interdependent, and we're more connected, and that scares people. And some people go the other way because they identify with themselves. And it was that. It's that ego, whether it's the ego economy or the ego something else. Some people are afraid that this world is changing, and they're afraid of the unknown. And sometimes people would rather stay in a boiling pot, too long, rather than saying, well, there's actually a way to jump out of the pot. And
it's actually
I think that we all have an opportunity to help people get out of the pot.
With snacks. Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Well, I want to take a slight turn, but I think that is definitely relevant in the conversation when we talk about where are we now. Forgive me for referencing the New Civilization course, because I was impacted in a very, very, very deep way. But one of the things that came up, one of the things that continued to come up during the 4-day class, and have been a reoccurring theme, at least in my life, in terms of conversations and groups, is the divine feminine, and how the feminine spirit, if you will, is taking precedence. And I think, from my experience, I think that this has been something I've been noticing for the last 10 to 15 years, if not more. But I would like, ladies, if you can speak to, what do you sense about the divine feminine, and what does that mean to you, as we also talk about the divine masculine? So ladies, whoever would like to pick that one up, move forward.
I'm going to let Constantina take that one. She is divine. That is true.
Indeed.
I think the divine feminine is a very good, energetic concept in reality. However, the beauty of the divine feminine is when it's in union with the divine masculine.
Wow.
It's not just the divine feminine, which is getting a lot of playtime right now. And I think that's excellent. But the key is, just as the key to feminism is that there is an extraordinary respect and union and balance with the masculine, because one without the other creates a chaotic space that we live in. And It's something that's really on my heart right now. I have so much appreciation for the men because they're living in a culture that's very different than it was 40, 50 years ago in terms of male-female relationships and energies and even spirituality. So I think that, yes, I think there's a much more awareness of the divine feminine, and I think there's a beautiful expression of it on the earth. But I think that it's very important and wise for us to realize that it's a union of the two. It's not one without the other.
Wow.
Seems unfair, though, that men got to run the world for thousands of years, and now women, enlightened women, are now saying, "Well, we got to do it in a union."
Not everybody thinks that way.
I saw Duane cover his eyes like that for one moment.
All right, Rosalind, I'm going to let you go next. While I think my way through this answer.
I think I'm kind of thinking too. No, but I'm where she's at, where Constantina is at. You know, it's a unity. I don't believe that it's one without the other. I think the true acceptance of femininity, if I'm saying it right, is being able to accept both. You know, that it's that oneness, again, going back to us needing each other. You know, that's not one without the other. And when you think about the universe, it's all one. So I'm kind of there with her on that one.
Neil, I want to mention something to Neil. You brought up a very important point, and it's this desire for the divine feminine that's being revealed in the world in terms of the leadership, the desire for women to want that masculine support in the same way that for centuries we have supported men. I mean, that's what we have done. And frankly, that's what a lot of us still do. And that's okay. But Neil, that desire for support as a woman is just a plaintive cry. That's the only way I can explain it, because it has been so missing. We've been the supporters. And now for men to move into that role of support, it does signify a union, a very beautiful union. And I do think that we're really very hopeful that we'll achieve leadership through the support of the masculine.
Yeah, I think men have to learn how to live in a world that's unitary, you know, which has a balance of the sexes. And again, I think there's a lot of resistance now, because not necessarily that many men don't in the United States, and only go around saying, well, men are superior to women, but many of us simply don't know how to be supportive, and we need to learn how to do it politically. You know, making sure we get balance in the nation's capital, balance in our state offices and local offices. It skews all across the spectrum. Corporations, obviously, it skews just all across the spectrum that men are still running things, and many men are uncomfortable. I think working for women managers and voting for women politicians. So we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and I think that that's so authentically real that you said we don't know how to do it. And that's very true. When I think, for example, of the 50s, when I was a small child, and the masculine impulse at that time, it was very different than it is now. But even so, men of my generation never learned how to do it. And I think the millennial men have a much better handle on it than previous ones. But still, there's never been that mentoring in regard to how to do it. So thank you for bringing that up.
I'd like to offer perspective, deep time perspective on the feminine, the masculine, and how they're converging at this time. And one of my passions of interest is in paleoanthropology. the deep cultures that existed in the ice ages and so on, and where did we come from? And one of the oldest, many of you have probably seen this, is the Venus of Willendorf. And it comes from Germany, and it's about 35,000 years old. It's a replica, and it's big enough that someone could carry with them as hunter-gatherers, as they would travel. And it has pointed feet, so you could put it in the ground. And there is an image that represents the sacred, as I would regard the sacred feminine, the generative feminine, the mysterious feminine from which life comes. So for tens of thousands of years, my understanding is that there was this deep regard for the feminine, the mysterious feminine that gave birth to life and so on. And then along comes agriculture, city-states, and all the rest, and patriarchy takes over. So then the guys get their chance to really dominate for a bit of history. But now, by virtue of circumstances, the conditions of the earth are requiring us all to work together. And that's awakening not only the feminine, but all of the other disenfranchised people around the earth. And that's a lot of folks, a lot of people. So this is revolutionary times as I see it.
I agree.
And you know something too, Duane? The interesting thing is, you're so right, it is revolutionary times. And while we are navigating our way through these revolutionary times, we still have to deal with the guy who cuts us off on the road. Deal with the relationship that's not working once again. We have to deal with the kid who's finding their own way. And this is such an interesting thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That despite our hopes, dreams, desires, purpose, everything, we still have those little things in humanity that kind of rattle where we think we might be in the integral food chain. You know, it's like, hey, guess you weren't there after all.
I don't know. I think it's those moments actually that give us hope, right? Because if we were all so confident that we knew everything, how unbelievably arrogant would we be if we didn't get our feet knocked out from under us every once in a while and just go, whoa.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like, I don't have this.
Yeah, rejoicing in our humanity, rejoicing in all that nitty-gritty stuff, because it's okay.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the things I think is very interesting that I add is, I think in terms of the feminist movement and some of the ideologies that have springboarded from that movement, is that women across the world share the same view. And I think what we will find out as we expand the airways, if you will, for lack of a better analogy, but as we expand the airways and we allow many other voices to contribute in the larger conversations, I think that we will hear a very different kind of perspective in terms of feminism. And it's not the dominant voice that, okay, men, move out of the way, we got to have women in place. Although, you know, as Neil would mention, that for thousands of years, we have seen women oppressed, depressed, abused, you know, in every other sense we can think of. Women have been the second, third class citizens of the planet, at least to my knowledge. You know, I know that the Native Americans have a strong matriarch society, but I think that overall, I mean, we have really done some things to women overall. But you know, even as I was in China, I would hear the women talk about feminist movement in a very, very different kind of way, where in terms of, let's just say, politics, that there were many of the adult students that I would teach that would talk about women were not fit for to be in political positions. And I think that is a much larger conversation than we could probably even tackle at this moment. But I thought that was really interesting because I'm channeling in my American women who, at least the feminists that I've spoke with, who had very, very different views. And so I think that as we go through the cycles of this period, we're going to find some very different and interesting interpretations of the divine feminine movement, or, you know, just the feminist movement in general. So I did want to contribute that. And that was just some takeaways that I brought with me from the class a few weeks ago. And so I don't know if anyone has a response to that, but there's my contribution to this part of the conversation.
I think we tend to believe there's a duality there that isn't. As if one is ascendant, one should be diminished, and vice versa. And speaking from my view, as just my view of feminism, I don't want the masculine to be diminished in any way. In fact, I want it to be enhanced and empowered just the way I would like the feminine perspective to be enhanced and empowered. And part of this comes from the fact that you know, and I hate talking about this, but it's relevant, that I wield both feminine and masculine energy. And certain days I'm one and certain days I'm the other. And my female side can be a warrior side. And my male side can be sensitive, more sensitive than the female side sometimes. And so there's a non-duality inside my own person that I have to wrestle with, and it colors my bias on how I look at the rest of the world and go, man, if I could just reconcile all these parts inside myself and get them functioning, you know, y'all work on that while I try to get my stuff straightened out. But I think it's possible, and it's necessary. And if we don't integrate completely all of those perspectives and bring them to the table, we will not at any point tap into the power of oneness that we are able to explore through all these different lenses to illuminate the truth, because the truth is seen through all of our lenses. And we should be able to honor that inside ourselves. People are just people. They're just people. And man, if we could just harness and integrate all of that, I think we would be so much better off than we are. It doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be one stronger than the other. It just happens. It just needs to be working together. So
I am so appreciating this conversation, but I'm going to need to go. And this has been such a treat for me to have this diversity of voices, views, and at this level of soulful level of conversation. So thank you, Rod. Thank you all. It's been wonderful to be with you. I hope we do it again sometime.
Thank you.
love you, Duane.
Okay.
But
Oh, I love Duane. He's so sweet. He's so sweet.
You're on mute again.
The host is on mute.
I was saying I love Duane too. You couldn't hear me, but I said it. But yes, I want to be respectful to everyone else's time as well, and so I don't want to keep you over. But I definitely want to. I want to do this again, and I know that there's so much more that we can dive into, because Shelly, I really wanted you to include your ideas about the AI, as we've talked about artificial intelligence, as we talk about mything a new reality, if you will, and how those things are included. And Constantina, from a mother of 9, and seeing all the things. Yeah. I hope you didn't mind me put that out there, but
amazing.
Oh man,
Time.
and
Birthing number.
she, you know,
Love it.
she is a international poet, and
Yes.
you know, to talk about all of the great work that you are doing and you have done, and how you feel that that has contributed to the planet, how it's contributed to making the changes that you desire to see, and Neil, the politician, and wearing many hats, and the book. Oh man, I'm just so ready to jump in. Neil, could you just kind of speak to your book just in a few minutes and just share with us, and then I'm going to start wrapping us up.
Yeah, it's the book's called "Preparing for a World That Doesn't Exist Yet," and
I love the title.
I know.
Good.
Rick Smyer and I co-wrote it together. Rick is a kind of well-known futurist, and he knows both of us have known Duane's work for a long time. And the basic premise, though, is yeah, that's awesome. The basic premise, though, is we're going through this moment of change, which we've been talking about earlier, and we're going to be shifting into a world that's going to be more ecological or integral, but it's going to be a bumpy ride. We believe that with the right type of leadership and people across the world, embracing what we call master capacities, will create the type of leadership and catalytic energy and movements that we need, you know, planetary wise to take us to the next step. Then we take a look at this framework through 4 sectors: the economy, higher education, governance, and health. And we apply the frameworks, and we look at the opportunities and the vast changes that are happening in each of those sectors.
That sounds fabulous.
And so again, just in case you all didn't see, this is what the book looks like here. And I'm actually putting this back up there just so when people listen to or watch the recording, they'll know what this book looks like.
Thank you.
So yeah, I'm really excited to dive into your book, man. And I know that Constantina is also working on her book.
I cannot wait to get a hold of.
Likewise. And actually, Ms. Rosalind, she has her published book. Her and her husband has published a few different materials over the last, 5 or 6, 8 years or whatnot. And they have many, many things that they're planning as well. As we wrap up, what I would like you all to do is at least provide some contact information. So in the event that people would like to contact you or know more about you, then they have a way to do so. So Shelly, I'm going to ask if you can start first, and then Constantina, then Ms. Ross, and then Neil.
Sure. Anyone can contact me. My blog is associationforecast.com. I'm on Twitter at Shellyalcorn, SHELLYALCORN, and I can be reached at Shelly@alcornassociates.com.
And Shelly, if you could you also just share a bit of what do you currently do in terms of your profession? And then before.
That's a good question. No, currently I am a avid supporter and proud to be a member of Ubiquity University, their leadership team. I am thrilled to be a part of it, and we are working on transforming education, making it real, making it relevant, and making it everything it should be. So I'm thrilled to be a part of the team. So that's what I'm doing, and then I speak and travel on being more human in a technological world and artificial intelligence and those sorts of things on the side. So, yeah.
Thank you. Excellent. All right, Constantina, please.
Well, as you mentioned, I'm the mother of 9 incredible human beings, and we're raised in as cool a way as I could possibly muster. And I'm Dean of Students and HR Director at the moment for Ubiquity University. You can reach me at constantina.clark@ubiquityuniversity.org. And I like to write.
Among many other things. Thank you, Constantina.
Okay. I'm a travel agent as well as a mother of 6.
Oh my.
I birthed 3, but I have 3 bonus
do 4
children.
more.
Like I said, I'm a travel agent. I'm a life coach. I'm a mentor. I do a lot of women's outreach, helping to empower women, do a lot of empowerment. And you can reach me at bpmitravelagency.outlook.com or bpmitravelagency@outlook.com. I'm sorry. And that's it.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Rosalind. All right.
You're welcome.
And Neil, last but not least.
Yeah. Well, I've just jumped off a cliff. I've just left after 8 years at the University of the District of Columbia in Washington, D.C. I've been director of continuing education. And I've decided that I needed to get more on the front lines, working and engaging this chaotic moment that we were talking about a little bit early. So I'm not exactly sure what that's going to look like, but I have I've got a website and some consulting and some speaking and a lot of writing that I'm doing called Emergent Action. So if you, rather than giving you my emails and Twitter account, just do Google Emergent Action. You'll go to my website and you can find out about me, my services, and what I'm up to.
Awesome. Very cool.
Okay. Well, are there any final thoughts or anything that you would like to share before we bring this to a complete closure?
I just want to say thank you, Rod. You are always coming up with good ideas, and you just are such a wonderful, positive presence in the world. I feel honored to have been invited to participate and would love to continue sitting around the virtual campfire with you all and telling new stories for a new world that it's up to us to create, whether it's old stories that we pick back up where they left off, or completely new ones that we write. Thank you for letting us tell some stories today.
Man, my honor. My honor. Thank you, Shelly.
I agree, Rod. I so appreciate the venue that you open up for us to come together and, as Shelly said, just kind of have a campfire moment and be able to share the stories, because the stories are really what's very, very important. So much imagination is birthed out of stories, and the imagination is what brings what we hope into being. So thank you for allowing us to just share together tonight.
My honor once again. Aunt C.
Thank you so much. Thank all of y'all as well for your contributions. I feel pregnant.
It was delightful to meet you.
Me too.
Wow.
Neil, you got to join the pregnancy movement, man.
That's right. I can't do that. Although, again, I just second what everybody's saying. It's just a joy to be part of a group and to be able to explore these incredible questions. And a few minutes ago, I was thinking, I was going to make a joke that these are the questions that Buddha sat in a cave for 8 years, pondering. And I'm kind of looking out my window here, and on my windowsill, I have a rock. And this rock I pilfered from the Buddhist cave in India 4 years ago. And so you've asked the questions of the Buddha, and here's a rock from his cave that he may have taken a look at and pondered the deep questions of the universe. So thank you.
Man, I am absolutely
Wow.
honored. Thank you.
That's awesome.
That is. Absolutely.
And Neil, I'm so glad you brought that up, because when you look at a rock, it has the slowest moving energy it seems possible, but it's a witness. It's been who knows how long, what you just showed us. And to invite that into our conversation,
Yes.
I think really honors the landscape of the earth. So thank you.
That was amazing.
Yes.
That was amazing. A Buddhist rock at a virtual campfire.
Wow. Well, Constantina, I've requested that you close us out, and We'll end the virtual fire for now, but it will continue.
Yes.
Okay. Well, kind of as Neil did, I'm going to be sharing with all of you a blessing prayer, which is from John O'Donohue. And if you wonder about my fascination with him, it's because I'm doing my PhD on him. So I've kind of immersed myself in his way of being. This is called For Longing. And we all are longing for this day to come when we'll see the hope realized in the earth that's living within us. Blessed be the longing that brought you here and quickens your soul with wonder. May you have the courage to listen to the voice of desire that disturbs you when you have settled for something safe. May you have the wisdom to enter generously into your own unease, to discover the new direction your longing wants you to take. May the forms of your belonging in love, creativity, and friendship be equal to the grandeur and the call of your soul. May the one you long for you. May your dreams gradually reveal the destination of your desire. May a secret providence guide your thought and nurture your feeling. May your mind inhabit your life with the sureness with which your body inhabits the world. May your heart never be haunted by ghost structures of old damage. May you come to accept your longing as divine urgency. May you know the urgency with which this somewhere, something longs for you. May that be blessed in everyone's life, be your reality. So be it.
Selah. Thank you. Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Thank you, Constantina. That
Thank
was
you.
Yes.
lovely.
Neil, I know that I originally had you closing out as well, but I requested that you start us. Are you okay? Are we okay to end now, or do you have anything that you would like to contribute?
No, that's fine. It's a feminine-dominated world now, so
Well, I think you just ended it, man. I love each and every one of you. Thank you so super much for contributing to this first roundtable discussion that I hope that we'll have many more, and that by the time we have our next one, I'm hoping to include more people from across this planet, which was the original plan. Should you feel the need to want to continue this, I'm actually going to be on another roundtable call with Peter and a few other students next Wednesday. And so if you're interested, please let me know. I can chime you in there. 2 of them are from the Netherlands, and one of them is he's currently in Morocco or France. I don't remember. I think he's traveling both back and forth. So if you want to join, you can. If not, I'm going to definitely be sending up a follow-up email and seeing when we can arrange our next meeting. Love you.
Sounds like a plan. Love you. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.